Well, it's my pleasure to introduce Shariff Abdullah, a longtime friend and brother. Shariff is a consultant, speaker, author, and advocate for social transformation, par excellence. His mission is to bring currently dysfunctional systems and structures into alignment with our common human and spiritual values to create a world that works for all living things. As director of Commonway Institute, he has visited over 43 countries and over 100 distinct cultures, giving him a unique perspective on our global human and spiritual issues and a vision which spans culture and class. Beautiful. Thank you, Shariff. Take it away.
Thank you for inviting me. Thank you for having me here. I think this is the second time I've been here. And I'm setting my timer as I was instructed to do. I want to share some things with you in about 10 minutes that really takes about 5 or 10 hours for us to go through. But because this group is so fast, you're going to get everything. What I want to start with, though, is start us thinking about what's the problem. We can't get to the solution without knowing what the problem is. We have an idea in our society that we've got these problems. Our problems are not what you think. Our problems are larger than climate change, larger than racism or sexism or homophobia or any of them, larger than COVID, larger than politics, and larger than just about anything else. Our question is, what is the problem? I think this guy nailed it pretty well some years ago. This is the late Václav Havel, the president of the Czech Republic. And in my book, Creating a World That Works for All, Havel wrote this introduction. Humankind today is well aware of the spectrum of threats looming over its head. We know that the number of people living on our planet is growing at a soaring rate. We know that the already deep abyss separating the planet's poor and rich could deepen further. We also know that we've been destroying the environment on which our existence depends, and that we're headed for disaster by producing weapons of mass destruction and allowing them to proliferate. And yet, even though we're aware of these dangers, we do almost nothing to avert them. Now, that introduction was in my book 20 years ago. Since that time, we've had an awful lot of studies. We had an awful lot of forums. We've been talking about this thing over and over, and we're going to do some more studying about this. The problem is we haven't even begun to scratch the surface on the problem. When I was in college and getting my undergraduate degree, I was at Clark University, which is known for psychology, which means I studied rats an awful lot because everybody knows that rats and people act alike. One of the things that we did an experiment where you put rats in a large metal cage. You make it large enough, you put enough food in there, you put enough water in there, and 2 rats will cohabit with each other. Then you send a mild electric shock through the floor of the cage. Immediately, when the rats feel this painful shock, they will start to attack each other. All they know is, I'm in pain, there's another rat. That rat must in some way be causing my pain. Let's make one of the rats white and one of the rats black. And we stand on the outside of the cage and say, oh, gee, white and black rats can't get along with each other. Well, they were getting along with each other fine until you put the shock through the cage. Let's change these from rats to human beings. And we stand on the outside and say, oh, the left and the right can't get along with each other. Or the whites and the blacks can't get along with each other. Or the climate deniers and the climate pro folks can't get along with each other. And none of us are asking the question, Number one, what is the nature of this shock going through our cage? And number two, how do we turn it off? So our challenge is to actually see the full iceberg. All of us know that 9/10 of an iceberg is below the waterline. We keep talking about things like global climate change or Black Lives Matter or COVID or any of these other issues while we ignore the mess. Now, the mess is a term from my book where I talk about our interlocking and the challenges that are driving us, the human race, to extinction. So what is the mess? When you start looking at all of these things together, you start seeing the magnitude of our problem. Holes in the ozone layer, political corruption, homelessness, pandemics, a decline in basic values, urban deterioration, civil wars, political and social alienation, overuse of fertilizers and pesticides, militarization of outer space. If you get nothing else from what I'm saying, please get this. What this is not 50 problems. What this is one problem with 50 presenting symptoms. Once you cure the one problem, all 50 of these you can address. Until you solve that one problem, none of it can you address. And that one problem is consciousness. The problem isn't global climate change. The problem is the consciousness that created it in the first place. Since the problem is consciousness, it has to be accepted and dealt with at the level of consciousness. Our challenges, both personal and global, cannot be resolved by the consciousness that created them in the first place. The significant problems we have cannot be solved with the same level of thinking with which we created them. Now, Einstein said that a long time ago, and yet we keep asking the people who create the problem to uncreate it. We get nowhere with it. Greta Thunberg is going to be a grandmother before the folks that are our current leaders are going to get around to actually addressing the problems. So our challenge is, how do we get to that point? Because if the problem is consciousness, the solution is consciousness. Once we shift that consciousness, giving birth makes sense. I don't know how many of you have been involved in the birthing process, either as a mother or as the hand-wringing father on the sidelines. That would be me. But you know it's a messy, nasty, it's a mess. But because you know there's a baby at the end of it, you get the process, you say, okay, this was worth it. And you sign up to do it again and again and again. Our challenge is to hold a vision. Reducing the amount of carbon in the atmosphere is not a vision. It's not even a good idea. It's not something I can get my mind around. Our emerging vision is creating a world that works for all. We're about to give birth to a planetary consciousness. If you don't know that you're giving birth, you focus on the problems and you don't focus on the solutions. Our vision of a world that works for all living beings is the thing that should drive all of our solutions, including our global climate change solutions. Our challenge is for us to get in step with the earth, get in step with each other, and use all of that energy for us to get in step with all of our solutions. Thank you.